where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is consultant editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 4 o'clock. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. Dock workers at one of Britain's busiest ports have gone on strike for 8 days. Nearly 2,000 union members at the port of Felixstowe in Suffolk are striking for the first time in nearly 30 years. The port handles nearly half of all container freight that travels into Britain. Union workers recently rejected a 7% pay rise because it's below the rate of inflation. The port's head of corporate affairs, Sharon Davies, says the strikes will prove costly for those workers.
Unite, though, have declined. They refused to put the offer we've made to their members, their 1,900 members. They've had no say in this, and now they're having to go on strike. And that's going to cost each of them, you know, the thick end of sort of 900, £900 each in lost wages.
Barristers are set to vote over a planned strike in a row with the government over jobs and pay. Members of the Criminal Bar Association in England and Wales have already staged brief walkouts. Now they're deciding whether to take uninterrupted industrial action that would start on the 5th of September. The ballot closes at midnight tonight, with the result expected tomorrow. Scotland's First Minister says a rise in the energy price cap must not go ahead as families across the country struggle to afford the cost of living. Nicola Sturgeon warns many families face destitution and devastation if the expected rise goes ahead in October. She's expected to hold a summit with energy bosses and is urging Westminster to work with the Scottish Government to find a solution. A voluntary scheme could help thousands of households with smart meters to save on their energy bills this winter. It's understood that the National Grid electricity system operator will announce plans to pay their customers for easing the strain on power grids at peak times. It says turning off appliances like washing machines and games consoles in the evening could reduce the risk of blackouts and save people up to £6 per week. The electricity generator hopes to have the scheme approved by the end of October. Outgoing Prime Minister Boris Johnson has reportedly approved a multi-billion-pound deal for a new nuclear power plant in Suffolk. Senior government sources say the decision to build the Sizewell C nuclear reactor happened several weeks ago. The project will be funded primarily through private investment, but the government is expected to buy a 20% stake in the plant. The daughter of a prominent nationalist Russian who supports the invasion of Ukraine has been killed in a suspected car bomb attack outside of Moscow. Daria Dugina was killed yesterday evening after a suspected explosive device blew up the car she was driving. Local media reported that Daria and her father had been visiting a festival together and decided to switch cars at the last minute. The Russian Foreign Ministry speculates that Ukraine may have been behind the attack, but Ukraine has denied any involvement. Heavyweight boxer Tyson Fury has called on the government to tackle knife crime after he says his cousin died after being stabbed in the neck last night. Posting on social media, the world champion described UK knife crime as a pandemic, and he called for higher sentencing for those convicted of carrying a weapon. He also paid tribute to his cousin, Rico Burton, wishing him a good place in heaven. The police watchdog is considering whether to investigate Scotland Yard after it emerged that officers came into contact with student nurse Sharon Davies after she was reported missing. The Met says they were called to an address in Croydon on July the 6th due to concerns over a woman's welfare, but she told them she didn't want help and they left. The interaction occurred before Essex Police handed the missing person case over to the Met on July 23rd. Members of the Scottish Parliament are criticising the UK's new free trade deal with New Zealand, saying it will be damaging to Scottish farmers. The agreement will allow much higher quantities of produce to come into the UK without tariffs, including 12,000 tonnes of beef every year. But Scottish ministers warn that domestic farmers will be at a disadvantage and they want greater safeguards similar to the EU's restrictions. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Nana.
So good afternoon, welcome on board. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It is fast approaching 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. Now, a lot of people are saying that university is a waste of time. And many students are demanding a refund. And who can blame them? 70 grand of debt if you're lucky. And to study what? Some vague sounding courses that don't really qualify you to do anything in particular. Sociology springs to mind, which is basically about making excuses for what you are. So if you turn out to be a criminal, it's because your mother didn't love you, that sort of thing. A degree basically about excuses. I'm already very good at that. Only joking. Remember this.
I mean, I failed. Maths, English, physics, geography, German, woodwork, art. I failed.
You didn't pass anything?
Pottery.
Pottery? Very useful. Anthony, people will always need plates. Anything else?
And sociology.
An ology? He gets an ology and he says he's failed. You get an ology, you're a scientist.
Well, there you go. When you add COVID to the mix and then 2 years of a 3-year course in lockdown with very little face-to-face learning, it's no wonder that students are complaining. The course transgressing online and changing beyond any recognition of what you signed up for, but the cost over £9,000 per year remaining the same. And even though it is online, then still having to fork out for rent for a room that you cannot leave because of lockdown, you might as well stay at home. Many did. What's the point? There's even now talk of increasing the fee to £24,000 per year to match the rate paid by the foreign counterparts. I mean, it's no surprise that they want their money back. Student Tia O'Donnell's post went viral when she sported an outfit demanding a refund for her practical art course at the University of the Arts London, which was basically conducted via her laptop. She said there hasn't been any consideration for students and that it felt quite British being told just to keep calm and carry on. Now, when I went to university, most people got a grant. Unfortunately, I didn't qualify. Now, if your parents' income was above a threshold, you didn't get anything, so I didn't get anything. Great in theory, because it sounds like it means your parents are rich, but in reality, there were 4 of us. And put it this way, my dad didn't get to where he got to by giving money away. I think he quite enjoyed the fact that we had to be extra nice and extra good if we wanted anything. Now, I did a business degree, and I had to subsidise what he gave me with a small student loan, dancing in clubs, don't tell him he doesn't know. And I also had a job as a bouncer at the union bars. Well, sarcasm and humour were my weapons. But at least I got to leave home, go to lectures, go out, meet people and experience university life. I left with a student loan of just £3,000 and a business degree. Money I feel well spent. Well, that can hardly be said for nowadays. It costs a fortune to go, and good luck if the degree is a bit vague, like sociology. I'm not even sure if that one's actually worth doing. But universities are run like businesses, though, these days. And in business, something I studied, if you do not provide what is agreed or what you provide is not fit for purpose, customers are well within their rights to demand a refund. Universities need to get with the programme. Right, so before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. My special guest in Outside at 5 is former Olympic swimmer, gladiator and all-round champion Sharon Davies. Now, during her career, Sharon broke a staggering 200 British records, and she claimed a silver medal in the 1980s Olympics, only being pipped to the post by an East German athlete who admitted to doping. And now Sharon is sitting the headlines over her controversial stance on transgender women in female sport, although I don't think it's that controversial at all. I think it makes perfect sense. We'll talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on The Outside. And in our Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are we heading towards a strike-imposed lockdown? With the railway network grinding to a halt, Royal Mail preparing for a potential strike, and now dockers joining the walkout, it seems like the country is once again being held hostage by the unions. But with many now choosing to work from home, could a de facto lockdown be imposed through large-scale strikes? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are we heading towards a strike-imposed lockdown? And in World View, 6 months into the conflict, the war rages on in Ukraine. We'll look at the Russian forces in Crimea, targeted by fresh drone strikes. And we'll head across the pond, as ever. We love to do that. Brace yourselves. It's Trump Watch, because if you thought that that was the first coming of Donald Trump, well, if you thought that was crazy, just wait for the sequel. That's on the way in the hour. So stay with me. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me @gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel. We've got consultant editor at the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. Good to see you. Nice to see you both. Great, great. Andrew, I'm going to start with you then. So, university, did you go to university?
I didn't. Nobody in my family went to university. In fact, I was the only member of my family who did A-levels. I got a job on a local newspaper 40 miles away, and I did it the old-fashioned way. But I think, I do support university, but I think too many people go. I think Tony Blair's target of more than 50% of school leavers going to university was insane. People were going to university for the sake of it. When I was 18, it was quite the done thing for kids to leave school and get an apprenticeship. And I think we should go back to the golden age of apprenticeships. My brother did an apprenticeship in British Rail. He's never been out of work all his life, and it was a good apprenticeship. You could get apprenticeships in British Leyland. That's where my father worked on the assembly line. That's another story, British Leyland, for another time. But so, and I've sort of got with you a bit now. I mean, why do you go to university to learn sociology? What's it about? I always thought sociology was a pretty pointless A-level too. Go and learn a proper academic subject with a view to becoming a doctor or a teacher. But a lot of people go to university and they leave, they've got a degree and haven't got a clue what to do with their lives.
Or they're expectant, aren't they? A lot of them expectant that this degree will mean the first job I get will be the job that I'm meant to be in. And I think a lot of students have a slight delusion when they come out, and that's not to be rude to them, but they're thinking that the first job is going to be the job that you're going to do, so they're sitting back and not doing them. What do you think? Did you go?
No, I left school at 15 with nothing.
You?
15, yeah, because my birthday was in August.
Right.
And just going back to your... Sorry?
Oh, were you saying that you would have been 16 in August, so you'd have left at 16?
Yeah, correct, yeah. Going back to your monologue, I want to say... I'm surprised you were a bouncer, but I'm not actually.
Really?
I can imagine you throwing out plenty of fellas my size.
I would do, just with sarcasm and humour.
And that scowl. So
exactly.
I left school at 15, went to work in Spain, had my 16th birthday working in Spain behind a bar in a hotel. At the age of 18, I went to the Lake District to become a waiter and then a chef and then a car dealer at the age of 21. So I've done reasonably well. And intellectually... Sorry, not intellectually. Academically, I'm lousy, absolutely lousy. And I often wonder about these young people who are going to be so in debt when they're 21, 22. And some of them continue to go on other courses like post degrees. Now, when I was 30, I went to university to become a journalist. And I tell you what, I was surrounded by people who've immersed themselves in education from the age of 4 to 21, and they were the dullest people I've ever met. Dull as anything. I'd much rather have a pint with a bricklayer who left school at 15 or 16 like me. Yeah. So I would advise people listening to this who maybe are lousy academically, please don't be disheartened. Yeah. If you've got something about you, you can make a success.
And the debt levels now that the country's been lumbered with, because a lot of people will never pay these student loans. You've got to earn a certain salary. What about the people who then go abroad and don't come back? I mean, it's billions and billions and billions of pounds in debt because we're sending too many kids to university.
Well, they're changing the criteria as well, so the interest rates are increasing, so that loan is not as cheap as you thought it would be. Yeah. And then they were talking about changing the parameters, so you'd pay a slightly higher interest for this, that, and it just seems, hold on a minute, this is not what we were promised or what the students were promised. You know, I think they're selling the debt onto different loan companies, so the whole procedure changes, and it's just out of order. I know that even happened when with my loan when
I don't know whether I've shared this with you, but I used to work at the BBC.
Oh God, here we go.
In Birmingham.
How many minutes in are we? Not even 15 minutes. Not even 15
I used
minutes.
to
Here we
work
go.
for the BBC. And you know what? My fellow journalists, they all had degrees in things like sociology or history or geography, and then a journalism course. Yeah. Absolutely irrelevant to the career they ended up in.
Well, the other one I think I'm a bit dubious about is media studies, because, I mean, what is it? Do you just read lots of papers, look at the TV? I mean, what is that? What is it? Do you look at social media? If anyone's watching who knows what it is, just let us know, because I'm flummoxed.
I always say to young people who want to be a journalist, if they're going to go to university, say do an academic course. Do history or English.
Or business.
Business. Politics, perhaps. Philosophy. Politics and philosophy. Yeah. But don't do a media studies course, because where does it take you? And because these days, I don't think I'd have got a job in newspapers now without a degree, because that's how it is. Whereas when I left, I mean, I had A-levels, that was the requirement. You passed your A-levels, you got your job. And in fact, I'd started work before my A-level results even came through. So it was a bit nerve-wracking waiting for that phone call 2 weeks later.
Do you think that universities should give some money back, though, to the students? Because a lot of them went through COVID.
I do. I think because, you went to university. University, a big part of it is the experience of university, integrating with your fellow students, lectures, the coursework. And if you're doing it in your study at home, I think they're entitled to a huge rebate on their...
Do you know what? I've been in dispute with I won't name the hotel, but a luxury spa, because I gave them a big chunk of money just before COVID, and then they closed for 6 months, and then when they did reopen, the limiting times, and you couldn't have a shower, all of this sort of stuff. And I said, can I have a refund on that? Because it's not how I envisaged it, terms and conditions, but somewhere hidden away, and they'll have this in the university. The T's and C's will be, what's it called, force majeure, act of God.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is as well, if you say put down money for a rental property, you sign the agreement and everything else like that, even that's sort of a side to the university, so you have to follow through with your rental agreement anyway. That's a contract that you signed, and a lot of them have done that, so they then had to go through with it, even though they're studying from home from their laptop.
Exactly, they're businesses at the end of the day. It's not their fault.
But that story in the front of the Sunday Times today, £24,000, the universities want it to go up from 9 to 24,000. Well, that will mean many working class kids from pretty disadvantaged backgrounds have got no chance of getting to university, which is really unfair.
Do you know what? In a way, because I think universities have become a little bit melancholy in some of the subjects that they're studying and they're teaching, and a lot of people are going simply for the fact that they should go. I'm actually more in favour of the apprenticeships now. And I think that actually, if they do this, because they're doing it to match the rate paid by the foreign students, if they do this, it will push maybe some of the working class people to different jobs, but actually, being a plumber, being an electrician, being those other professions, you get paid more anyway, so to be honest...
A plumber is gold dust. Anyone know a good plumber? It's gold dust. To have a good plumber.
Do you know, this is capitalism, isn't it? Because the universities are basically saying, look, we can get a kid over from China for 24 grand, so why should we sell it to a kid from Coventry for 9 grand?
I know. And of course, if you're in Scotland, you're not paying at all. Extraordinary.
It is. And also, if you want to be a copper, you've got to get a degree, generally speaking.
Well, if you want to be a midwife...
That's crazy.
I know,
to be a police officer.
I know. And we've got such a shortage of police officers.
And we're going to have even more shortages because they're not going to pay 24 grand just to get a degree to become a copper.
Don't they do some scheme where they'll study and pay, and you can study and work?
Yes, but the rule is, generally speaking, the rule is you've got to have a degree.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some professions I don't believe it needs. I think we put too much emphasis on this. I want to ask then, you have a degree?
No.
Do you have a degree?
I've got a postgrad in broadcast journalism.
Has anybody ever asked you for that qualification?
No, and also I
Me
cheated
neither.
my way through the course as well. That's an on-air confession.
Yeah, when I got my first
What
job...
did you say? Did you say you cheated?
Cheated my way through the final courses, yeah. I got someone else to do my videography, my news report.
Oh dear, well, I suspect that whoever gave you that will be listening and that will be...
That's a long time ago, Nana.
But you know, when I got my first job on a national newspaper on a contract with the Times back in 1989, the editor didn't even ask me if I had a degree. He just wanted to know what experience I'd got as a journalist. I'm not sure whether that would be the same today.
Yeah, well, nobody's ever asked me for my degree.
Isn't that amazing?
Do you have a degree? Let me ask you, do you have a degree?
Yes, I do. I've got a business degree in HNC in computers and HND in business and finance. Load of O-levels, A-levels.
Well, so she says.
Yeah.
Well,
clever than us.
because you're a liar,
Clever than
that's
us.
why. Right, well, listen, if you've got your thoughts, let me know. Please get in touch. You know the coup, you know what to do. This is GB News. I am Nana Akua. If you just joined me, where on earth have you been? Now, in my monologue, I mentioned the student, Tia O'Donnell, who wrote, I want a refund on her graduation gown because she felt that her education was stolen by the pandemic. Now, a University of the Arts, London, a spokesperson said this: we do not underestimate the challenges and upheaval caused by the pandemic. During the pandemic, staff worked tirelessly to ensure that students' learning was supported. We absolutely recognise the rights of individuals to peacefully protest and express themselves, and we welcome the opportunity to listen to feedback. Well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. It's fast approaching 20 minutes after 4 o'clock. Still to come, we've got so much on the way. Our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, are we heading towards a strike-imposed lockdown? Now, it looks to me that everyone wants to go on strike. You've got the railway workers, tube drivers, Royal Mail, barristers, and now dockers. They're all joining in on the action. And it feels like this country has been held to ransom by the unions. But now so many of us are actually choosing to work from home. A situation similar to that imposed by the COVID lockdown appears to be happening. We've got used to staying at home and a lot of people are enjoying it. A form of lockdown imposed through large-scale strikes in transport and the public sector. What do you think? Are we heading towards that sort of situation? Send me your thoughts. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can also tweet me at gbnews. I've got a poll up right now. I'm asking you that question. Are we heading towards a strike-imposed lockdown? Cast your vote now. But first, let's get an update with the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many with some clear spells, but outbreaks of drizzle will continue in Wales and southwest England. Let's take a look. Patchy rain and drizzle will spread further inland across the southwest this evening, with mist around the coast of Devon and Cornwall. It will be a warm and humid evening. Southeast England will stay dry with some clear spells. A warm evening here as humidity rises throughout the night. Thick cloud will linger across Wales with some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle at times. There could be some mist and fog around parts of the south coast. A mostly dry end to the day in the Midlands, although there could be a few spots of light rain around Birmingham as the cloud thickens. After a dry and sunny day across much of northern England, it will be a fine evening with plenty of clear spells. Feeling fresh under the clear skies, but turning more humid later on. Showers in Scotland will gradually ease away this evening, leaving most places dry and clear. Turning chilly after dark as temperatures quickly fall away, there could be 1 or 2 showers to end the day in Northern Ireland, but most places will stay dry. It will be a fairly cloudy evening. A southerly breeze will give a fairly warm and humid night across the south. Further north, it will be fresher, but heavy rain will arrive into Northern Ireland in the early hours. And that's how the weather's shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon. Welcome on board. It's 24 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And of course, it is time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, are we heading towards a strike-imposed lockdown? Now, with the never-ending parade of railway workers striking, we've got Royal Mail on strike, we've got the dockers, they're also walking out. It seems we're all being held hostage by the unions. There's talk of a general strike as well, that's on the horizon. More workers are looking for pay rises to combat inflation. But with many now choosing to work from home, could we end up in a de facto lockdown because of large-scale strikes in transport and in the public sector jobs? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are we heading towards a strike-imposed lockdown? Well, let's have a chat with Rob Williams. He's the Socialist Party industrial organiser and he's a trade unionist. So Rob, are these strikes justified in your view?
Oh, absolutely. This is the biggest cost of living squeeze for generations. Workers, are really struggling, some are struggling to heat their homes, some are struggling to eat. So, yeah, of course, they're absolutely justified. And I give full support to them.
You give full support to them, but the question is, though, do you feel in your mind that in a sense we are being pushed towards what will appear to be a lockdown as so many different industries are forcing workers ultimately to work from home? For example, the rail workers, the tube workers, I think the buses might be going soon. People can't get to work anymore.
Look, the biggest issue here is that workers are right to take action. They'd be even more effective if they took action together. The National Shop Stewards Network is lobbying the TUC on the 11th of September. We think all unions should strike together against what is a weak Tory government that is inflicting great harm on working class people. Now, if as a consequence of that action, then people are temporarily affected. But what you've got to understand is that if workers get the pay rise they deserve, then all workers will gain from that. And I just want to make this point, that we have workers who are not in the trade unions, workers like in Amazon, who are attracted to the methods of the trade unions. They're not repelled by them. And we saw in the last couple of weeks, workers in Amazon who were offered 35 pence an hour pay rise by one of the richest companies in the world. What have they done? They've taken action. So unions are an attractive force. And I think most workers support their action. That's been my experience.
So what if you end up being on the back foot of that? Say, for example, you're sick, the doctors or nurses strike and you can't get treatment. In your view, is that still... You would accept whatever comes your way because, you've just, from what you've just said?
Yeah, I was on this programme yesterday and before I came on, you had a news item, or your programme had a news item about the crisis in the NHS, which has been presided over by this Tory government. So every day of the week, every day of the year, there is a crisis in the NHS. But those NHS workers, or workers in general, taking action isn't the cause of that crisis. In my opinion, it's the way to start the process to solve some of those issues. Let's make this clear. The more effective the workers' action is, then the more likely it will be short-lived. It will be temporary because it will be more effective.
Yeah, but Rob, you haven't answered the question, though. Would you be all right with that, then? So you need the medical services. They're on strike. You end up being one of the culprits as a result. Is that OK by you?
No, the point I'm making is that workers' action...
I understand your point, and I hear your point. Now, listen,
and I'm going to make it felt. Workers taking action are not the reason why the emergency services, the public sector, and loads of industries are in crisis. They're in crisis because what we have in this country is a country run for the rich. We have industries that have been looted by the private sector, and therefore workers are absolutely justified in taking action, even if that means temporarily.
Okay. I understand, and I agree that people should take some form of action, but when the action creates a paralysis in terms of people being able to get to work, the first thing is if everybody does get a pay rise, it'll create a level of inflation, so therefore the pay rise will be worth nothing. That's the first thing. But the second point that I was still making was that the second thing that you just haven't answered is if you were caught up in this, as a lot of people are being caught up in it, which is why a lot of people are staying at home, which is really the focus of the question, would you be comfortable with that? If it was you, if it was the health workers and health service, and it was you who couldn't get treatment as a result?
Okay, but I would understand. So
that would be okay.
It's not just that I would understand. I am already seeing people who come up to picket lines, people who see workers protesting, talking to workers anyway. They say to me, look, this might have affected me in this one instance, but I totally understand why those workers are taking action. More than that, we should be taking action as well.
Well, listen, I've got to move on because I've got the other point of view and I want to provide balance, but I appreciate your thoughts and thank you very much for sharing them with us. That is Rob Willis, the Socialist Party industrial organiser and also a trade unionist. Thank you so much. Right, let's speak to Len Shackleton. He's a rail expert from the Institute of Economic Affairs. OK, right, what do you think then of these strikes, first of all? I mean, do you think it's a good thing that people should be striking in this way?
I think people will always strike. But, I mean, listening to Rob just now, I mean, this is like a historical reenactment society or something. They want to replay the general strike. It's an action against the government. The reason we're in this mess at the moment is twofold. One is we ran up an absolutely massive bill over COVID. Number two, we've got this imbroglio in Ukraine. These things are inevitably going to crash living standards. To blame it on the Tories, blame it on employers, all this stuff is very 19th century. It's not 21st century.
So, in your view then, because ultimately what I'm seeing is a potential for almost like an imposed lockdown through these strikes and more people working from home to avoid getting embroiled in this disruption. In your view, do you think these strikes have the potential to paralyse this country on many levels and force people to stay at home?
Well, I think many of the people who actually keep us going are not on strike. The people who work in food processing, in manufacturing and so forth, the people who deliver goods and so forth, they're not on strike. And one of the things which is not clear from the narrative of people like Rob is that the people who are going out on strike are actually the better off workers. Union members in Britain today are a relatively prosperous group. Poorer workers in retail, in manufacturing, food processing, farming, etc., they're not organised in unions. They're going to lose out as a result of this.
And what do you make of the rejection, then, of the government's 8% offer by RMT? Because that's quite a generous offer, considering where we are with inflation.
Well, I think the money aspect in the case of the RMT dispute is a relatively minor aspect of it. I mean, what they want to do is basically say there's going to be no redundancies, no change in working practices, everything goes on as before, in a situation where the income, the revenue from the railways has crashed by about 20%. It isn't easily going to come back. There isn't money there to pay for it unless the taxpayer dips into the pocket once again. So the RMT, I think, the important thing about them is, yeah, we can pay them a little bit more, perhaps. I think we probably will end up doing that. But we must insist on changes which will boost productivity and build a future for the railway, rather than just say everything goes on as before.
Well, listen, Len, thank you so much for your thoughts. That's Len Shackleton. He's a rail expert from the Institute of Economic Affairs. Thank you. Well, let's see what you've been saying already. Luke says, I can't hear the word lockdown. It gives me the shivers. Oscar says it doesn't bother me either way. Politicians and their games have destroyed this country. Ross says we shouldn't give in to threats of strikes. If we do, it will cause a snowball effect and slow down our nation. Keep your thoughts coming. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, we'll continue with our Great British Debate. I'm asking, are we heading towards a strike-imposed lockdown? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, consultant editor at the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and also broadcaster and journalist, Danny Kelly. He's so grateful that I'm calling him that. I don't normally do it. That's the last time I'm doing it, Danny. Coming up at 5 o'clock, it's Outside. I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, someone who's had an extremely interesting career, to take a look at life after the job. And, of course, fabulous, famous, former Olympic swimmer, Sharon Davies. She was also a gladiator and fabulous. She's absolutely brilliant. She's a champion. We'll talk highs, lows, lessons learned and what comes next on the Outside. That is on the way. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. 4:33. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. Dock workers at one of Britain's busiest ports have gone on strike for 8 days. Nearly 2,000 union members at Felixstowe in Suffolk are striking for the first time in nearly 30 years. They recently rejected a 7% pay rise as it's below the rate of inflation. Barristers are voting over a planned strike in a row with the government over jobs and pay. Members of the Criminal Bar Association in England and Wales are deciding whether to take uninterrupted industrial action starting on the 5th of September. The ballot closes at midnight tonight, with the result expected tomorrow. A voluntary scheme could help thousands of households with smart meters to save on their energy bills this winter. It's understood that the National Grid electricity system operator plans to pay customers for easing the strain on power grids at peak times. It says turning off appliances in the evening could reduce the risk of blackouts and save people up to £6 a week. Heavyweight boxer Tyson Fury is calling on the government to tackle knife crime after he says his cousin died after being stabbed in the neck last night. Posting on social media, the world champion described UK knife crime as a pandemic and called for higher sentencing for those convicted of carrying a weapon. He also paid tribute to his cousin Rico Burton, wishing him a good place in heaven. The police watchdog is considering whether to investigate Scotland Yard after it emerged that officers came into contact with student nurse Awami Davies after she was reported missing. The Met says they were called to an address in Croydon on July the 6th due to concerns over a woman's welfare. However, she told them she didn't want their help and they left. The interaction occurred before Essex police handed the missing person case over to the Met on July 23rd. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Back to Nana in just a moment.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
37 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, are we heading towards a strike-imposed lockdown? Now, it does seem that everybody wants to go on strike. You've got the railway workers, I mean, they're currently on strike now, tube drivers, Royal Mail, barristers, the dockers are now doing it. All of this is coming. Now, it feels like the country's been held to ransom by the unions. We've even, in the end, it seems as though we'll end up with a lockdown by default. So I'm asking, are we heading towards a strike-imposed lockdown? Let's see what my panel make of that. I've got with me consultant editor at the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. I'll start with you, Danny, because Andrew went first last time.
Yes.
Strikes, there are loads of them happening at the moment. Everybody wants to do it, and it seems to be restricting the flow of actually work.
I agree with the possibility of removing your labour. I genuinely do. But they are opportunists at the moment. I read here in Liverpool, the People's Republic of Liverpool, my own home city. Victorious Arriva bus drivers say the people of Merseyside kept them going during a 29-day strike. Now, they've just settled on an 11% pay hike. Now, what worries me is that the public aren't supporting this strike, generally speaking, in my view. So Mick Lynch, who I really admire, I know that he's an enemy of a lot of the people, but I really admire the spirit of that lad. And they've turned down an 8% pay rise. Now, this is inflationary. Inflation will go down. So do they still have that 11% which they want? Will that then go down when inflation goes down?
No,
there are so many...
You never go down with the pay rise. I mean, the pay rise is the pay rise, so whatever happens to inflation, once you've got your rise...
But their argument is that it needs to keep up with inflation. That's the whole argument. So when it goes down to 5%, hopefully next year, will that then be reduced? So I don't think there's the appetite for a strike. I think it's different to the 70s and the 1980s. You know, people can work from home. You know, there's a lot more remote working done. So I think it's not as potent. I think this strike is fairly impotent. Unless, of course, you live in London and you can't get the train somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in... so I was in London on the day of the tube strike, for instance. Now, that was chaos because it really paralysed London. The roads were completely gridlocked. And if you looked in restaurants and shops, deserted. Because
really?
people couldn't come in. And that was a strike over conditions, apparently. But I think the trouble with the RMT strike, I think this is really political. I don't agree with you, unusually, Danny, about Mick Lynch from the RMT. I think he's trying to bring down the Tory government. He's trying to do Keir Starmer's job for him. That's why he's urging a general strike. Your guest who you had on earlier talking about other trade unions should be involved. They're all going to talk to the TUC on September 11th. They want a general strike to try to bring the whole country juddering to a halt. It didn't work in 1926. It ended in 9 days. It was humiliation for the unions and the workers lost out. And I think the workers will lose out here because they're losing all this pay and inflation is soaring ahead in the trains in particular, your guest from the IEA made the point. The number of people using trains has collapsed since the pandemic. It's down 20%. They carry on with these strikes. It's going to go down even more. So how can they pay them 12, 13% more if people aren't using the trains?
I think, actually, this might be, and it's going to be painful, but it might be one to sit it out because ultimately, and just to correct myself, it's the train strike was yesterday. Today it's the dockers.
Yeah.
But it's just there's so many of them. I mean, we've got the dockers, they joined the strike today. Barristers, they'll be voting today on whether to strike indefinitely for next month. I mean, there's just a list of the Royal Mail are talking about striking as well. I'm looking at it, and there's an element of stagflation where inflation is rising, but then you would have a lot of unemployment as well. But we've got really high levels of available employment, so unemployment isn't actually high. There's a lot of available employment. So I'm not really sure how this will pan out, because everything can't go to a halt. We can't all stop, and the unions can not all keep paying for workers who are on strike. So this is going to end, I think, in quite a bad way for the unions. And I feel there might end up being some sort of dispersal of power of unions and the fact that people won't want to join them because it's actually, when it becomes something that's detrimental to the economic environment as a whole, this isn't going to help anyone.
No.
It's not going to help anyone, not even them.
And why won't the RMT put the pay offer to the members?
Yeah.
They simply
They
refuse
won't.
to do that. No. They say they've got their own democratic negotiating procedures and they're confident that they've got it right. Why don't they put it to the members?
I wasn't aware of that.
I find that the members say, "We'll have that, thank you very much. We don't want to lose any more time off work."
Do you know, I bet you they would go for 8% as well.
Of course they would.
Of course they would. They want to get back to work because they're losing money every day they strike. They may get a couple of quid, but they're losing their daily pay.
It reminds me a bit of Arthur Scargill and the miners' strike in the 1980s. He never ever put that to a democratic vote of his workers, so he didn't have legitimacy for the strike. And I think Mick Lynch is in danger of losing legitimacy.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, put it to the staff, and if they reject it, so be it. But if they accept it,
I think they would accept it, defo.
Yeah.
I think they will, and people will start to break away because once you start this, the unions only work if people are united in thought. And I suspect that a lot of people are now that they've got families, they need to get their money, and people will be struggling. The unions will not be able to support all their workers. Not everyone can go on strike.
They're worrying about their fuel bills, and if they keep going on strike, that's going to be eating into their savings even more. And they're worrying about their fuel bills, how they're going to pay their fuel this year. They won't get a 14% pay rise.
It's not realistic. It can't happen. We can't. And also, it will simply inflame inflation.
Yeah.
It will have to, because their prices will just carry on rising. So even if they do get the percentage that they're after, it won't make any difference. The percentage, the difference will continue to rise.
But they will be emboldened by what's happened in Liverpool in the last 24 hours. The fact that if you see it through, it's a case of who blinks first. Now, I've just read that they were on strike for 29 days. I'm assuming not continuously, but for 29 days. And the employer has blinked first, and they've settled on an 11%. So Mick Lynch wants 14, does he?
Well, I think it's something like that, or 30.
I admire him less now.
Yeah.
Let me qualify my admiration. I admire him on telly, being challenged and coming back.
He's a good advocate.
Yes. So that's why I admire him. But he's running this place like a dictatorship now. So he's got the green light from his members to go on strike. Now, the members should have that put to them, 8%. Put it to your members. He's running it like a dictatorship.
I think the power's gone to his head a bit, because there was a bit where he was the golden child and everything he said, everyone was thinking how great it is. But I'm beginning to see him falter a little bit. And I'm just thinking that he needs to think this through. He needs to be realistic, and he needs to understand that the country needs to run. Whilst I do agree that workers should have rights to, complain about the environment, but I think there needs to be a skeleton service provided. And if they're not careful, all they'll end up with is regulation, because that's what Liz Truss is talking about, and that's what's going to happen. There'll be regulation to ensure this can never happen in this manner again.
Well, and they are saying that as soon as the new government's new Prime Minister's in place, they're going to bring in that legislation so that the railways have to provide a minimum level of service, and the government can bring in outside workers to work on the railways. So they should, because they are holding us to ransom.
Although,
you can't have people who driving the trains, of course.
Say,
but the other stuff they can do.
And they're not paid that badly. The train.
He wants to try being self-employed like me. Running a business.
Yeah.
Do you know what? August, I haven't sold one car.
Oh no.
One car. It's awful. You got the seasonal effect because people are on holiday, and you got the cost of living.
Yeah.
Now I still have overheads to pay.
You do.
I can't go and ask my local council for a 14% relief on my business rates or my VAT or my tax. No way.
On the other hand, and just to put it out there, I do see the point that Rob was making about a lot of the company bosses and people at the top of the different big companies making a lot of money whilst a lot of people are suffering, and using the workers to bring in that cash whilst they're not feeling the benefit of it. So I get that people are striking, but then on the other hand, a lot of those union bosses are paid quite well. The unions are paid well.
Well, this distills what pure Marxism is. The proletariat making all the money for the bourgeoisie. So why should the bourgeoisie, the bosses, be earning, I don't know how much they're earning, but they're six figures, and they get dividends, and they get payouts, pay hikes, and then you've got the proletariat, the working class, who are providing all of that for them. And if people are making millions and millions and millions, these train operators, then I understand, and I have sympathy. I don't mind profit, I'm a capitalist, but there's an element of profiteering sometimes that makes me feel uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah, and you can certainly say that about the energy companies too.
Oh my God,
look at the profits they're making.
My God.
Staggering amounts of money.
I know, but then, you see, I believe that on this, you should never, ever privatise your vital organs. It's like, you don't privatise water. Look, I believe in capitalism, I believe in that, but you don't privatise water. To me, it's the most obvious thing. It's the most basic requirement and the necessity of every human being. And the main reason why you don't privatise water is because I can't choose what water pipes I use. No. I have to use the water that comes to me, and they are my supplier. There is no competition in there.
No.
So there's no way you should privatise it. It's no surprise to me that these people haven't invested, and that the shareholders are taking the dividends, and that they're pumping sewage into the sea. I mean, it's just...
They are appalling. They're out of control, the water companies. They really are.
I don't understand why nothing's being done.
And some of the pay they're getting, the chief executives. And how ironic that Thames Water, we all got our text saying hosepipe ban on the very day the heavens opened.
And
you know that a quarter of that rain would have gone down the plug hole.
Well, pretty much, and then they're still losing billions of litres every single day, not fixing the leaks.
No.
And you know what, I actually think that they should be fined out of existence. So what you do is you fine the water company beyond their value. If they don't do what they're meant to do, then you pull them into public ownership. That's what I would do. If it was me, I would fine them so much so that it wouldn't be worth them trading if they breach the rules.
It's cheaper for them to be fined for pouring raw sewage into the sea than disposing of it properly in a proper regulated way.
But they could change that. They should
increase the fines.
They should change it so that it will be, say, you will lose maybe 75% of whatever the fine will be a huge percentage of your business, so that then the government can buy it back off you, take it off your hands, and then we the taxpayer, will pay for it. But if it was me, the fines aren't big enough. They should be so much so that it's not in the water company's interest to lose their entire business. That's what I think. But anyway, today we've been talking about strikes, as it seems we're heading towards self-imposed lockdowns as a result of them, and lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts. Mark says, honestly, I think ignoring them is the best option at this point. They need attention to succeed in their strikes. Interesting. I mean, could we ignore them? I don't think we'll get away with that. I don't think that would happen.
It's our job to report them.
Saul says, I think strikes are necessary, a necessary evil we'll have to deal with. I don't find everyone striking all at once to be fair for the public, though. It's very counterproductive, actually, I would say. Cameron says, I don't see a lockdown occurring, but I do see many more troubles to come due to a strike. I'll tell you what I see is that we will come up with better ways of doing things. So Royal Mail striking, I don't know how much I'm bothered. I mean, there's so many other different ways of...
Well, and they're losing so much business anyway to competition. Look at Amazon and other parcel companies, and they're just going to cost themselves even more. It's another self-inflicted goal. Yeah, they're crazy.
I don't
they're going to do themselves out of a job.
I don't use Royal Mail.
No.
Dale says, we are heading towards a union-type lockdown. So Keir Starmer is unable to do anything to help the situation. We are at an impasse. I agree with you there. Well, we've got a poll up on Twitter throughout the show, and I'm asking, are we heading towards a strike-imposed lockdown? Currently, 38% of you say yes, 62% of you say no. We shall follow that poll throughout the show. Be interesting to see how it transpires. Well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel. Now, after the break, it's World View. 6 months, yes, it's been 6 months into that conflict. The war is raging on in Ukraine. We'll get the latest on the drone strikes targeting Russian forces in Crimea. And we'll be taking a look across the pond in Trump Watch. We're going to find out what he's been up to. But first, we've got a short break. Back in a moment.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm
Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
If you've just joined me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Now it's time for Worldview. In just a moment, we'll be heading over to America to discuss the latest happenings with Donald Trump. But first, let's get the latest on the Ukraine conflict as Russian forces in Crimea continue to be targeted by drone strikes. To bring us up to date, I'm joined by journalist Danny Armstrong. Danny, thank you very much for joining me. So bring us up to date. What's going on? Because the first time they talked about the Ukraine, it was all about neo-Nazis and the threat of neo-Nazism. And I want to actually ask you the question, how much truth is there in that? Because, everyone says, oh, Vladimir Putin, and I don't support Putin in any way, but how much truth is there in that? Is Ukraine somewhere that there is a problem with that?
Well, it's a really, really good question. I'm glad you asked it, because there is a little bit of truth to it, but as I think everybody knows, it has been a pretext for the invasion. A pretext, of course, I mean, when Vladimir Putin announced that he would invade Ukraine, he said it was with the goal of denazifying Ukraine,
right, yes, he did.
Demilitarizing Ukraine. Now, of course, that's really, really helpful to the Russian side on two fronts. Now, on the first front, it's a really, really good conscription tool, because 27 million Soviet lives were lost during the Great Patriotic War, as it's called in Russia, the World War II, the fight against Nazism, when Nazism was eradicated. There's not a family that has... or every family, rather, in Russia has at least one loss to Nazism. So when the call is going up that Russia is again rising to defeat Nazism, it invokes a lot of really, really strong feelings towards the war effort. Even if young men don't know what exactly is going on, people in the provinces who don't have access to other news outlets, they can be kind of manipulated into believing that they are fighting against Nazism. Now, on the other hand, these people are earning around $200, $300 a month. Now, if they're earning $4,000 or $5,000 in the army and $70,000 gets given to their family in the case of their death, they can also almost atone for the loss of their for their grandfathers and their forefathers or anybody they've lost in the family. Now, second of all, if the aim is to denazify Ukraine, of course, anybody fighting against that automatically becomes a supporter of Nazism. So it dehumanizes anybody who is opposing the war, of course, any Ukrainian who wants to just defend their homeland. And it's also quite useful in the fact that nobody can quantify how many Nazis have been killed if Ukraine has been cleansed of Nazism. Of course, one Nazi is one Nazi too many. So if Vladimir...
So it's quite an emotive subject he's using. But is there any truth? I mean, has Ukraine got any sort of problem of this?
Well, yeah, sure. If Vladimir Putin used the Azov battalion as a big part of that pretext for the invasion. Now, the Azov battalion was set up in 2014 to combat Russian forces in 2014, and later on that year they became part of the Ukraine National Guard. The Azov battalion has had neo-Nazi links, has had white supremacist links. There's a lot of international outlets that this year that came out and said that they were just the same as any other battalion in any other army. That's actually really not the case. There is a Nazi element, but they're all united by one common enemy, and nothing unites people like one common enemy. So they're all fighting together now in the Ukraine National Guard. But of course, if there is a case where Russia has to compromise and has to lose ground, Vladimir Putin can simply say, well, we've defeated Nazism, because nobody can prove to the contrary.
So we've got about a minute left. So I just want to find out, so where are we now with the war? What's happening? Cars being bombed?
Well, we have Crimea, where Ukraine has not... they've not claimed responsibility for the attacks on Crimea, and that has wiped out around about half of the Black Sea front down there. What it means is that the Ukraine are attacking much further behind enemy lines than before. And of course, as it's part of Russia, as it was annexed in 2014, it means that they've touched a part of Russia, a part that was off limits before. And of course, we've got the Zaporizhzhia power plant that's occupied by Russia. Russia has refused to demilitarize, and Ukraine is accusing them of blackmail because, of course, if you launch an attack from a power plant, you cannot really retaliate as there'd be catastrophic offences. But what we're looking at now is...
Everyone dies.
Of course, yeah.
Russia's over as well. I mean, that'll reach Russia. They
Of
can't.
course, yeah.
So it wouldn't be in his interest. And if he's serious about launching nuclear weapons, then why is he scared of doing that?
Well,
So
precisely.
That's it. Well, listen, stay with me because I want to go stateside now and have a chat with the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudridge, although I think he's here in the UK somewhere. He's finally crossed the waters and joined us in England. Paul... actually in the United Kingdom, because I think you're in Scotland. So talk to us then. What's been going on, Paul? And are you enjoying yourself in Scotland?
Yeah, well, I am in the United Kingdom for now. If all the people I've been talking to in Edinburgh get their way, this won't be in the United Kingdom for much longer. So they're all gung-ho for independence, everybody. But no, I'm at the Edinburgh Festival where I'm watching a lot of socialist comedians make a fortune lecturing their audiences about the evils of capitalism. So that's always a fun week. And do I miss the California sunshine? No, look at me. Look at this set. I mean, I look as if I look like roadkill. Look at this.
Well, let's talk
Not
about
healthy.
Trump now. Enough of you. What about Melania, that Trump then? She's gearing up to be First Lady again by the looks of things.
Well, yeah. No, look, the Melania thing is actually really quite serious. It's so many commentators had basically written her off as some kind of trophy wife and said that the moment that Trump was out of the White House, that Melania was going to leave. And like now it's becoming apparent that she's actually the power behind the throne. She actually is very supportive, very loyal, dotes on President Trump, and is fully supportive of another run. And so all that sort of phooey that gets thrown at Donald Trump, where every aspect of his private life is undermined, and how can I say, he's subject to so much disrespectful commentary, has been again disproved. She's very supportive, and yes, gearing up to be First Lady again, which technically she is now, but that's another matter.
Well, very briefly, I want to ask you about this. Any developments with the FBI raid? We've got about 30 seconds.
The developments, the only developments are that Donald Trump today has just said that he's definitely saying that this is democratically motivated and they want to keep him out of the 2024 election. And so that's what he's made that statement in the last 30 minutes, that he's basically said that this is absolutely a Democrat action. And I think he's probably got a point. I mean, I'm still waiting for the prosecution of Hillary Clinton for the destruction of the 30,000 emails, but I might be a long time waiting for that.
We're all still waiting for that, and Hunter Biden's laptop.
Treat the FBI raid as the declaration of Trump running. They've basically announced his candidacy.
Fantastic. Paul Dudridge, thank you so much. He's the host of the Politics People podcast. Enjoy Edinburgh. Also, thank you very much to Danny Armstrong. He's a former Moscow correspondent. Thank you very much. Well, this is GBNews. I'm Nana Akua. More to come in a moment's time. If you just joined me, it's just gone 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. We're live here on GB News, on TV, online and on digital radio for the next hour. Me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics hitting the headlines right now. And this hour, I'll be joined by former Olympic swimmer Sharon Davies. She's going to be discussing her amazing career outside. And in the Great British Debate, I'm asking, is it time to scrap parliamentary recess? But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. 1 minute past 5. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. Dock workers at one of Britain's busiest ports have gone on strike for 8 days. Nearly 2,000 union members at Felixstowe in Suffolk are striking for the first time in nearly 30 years. The port handles nearly half of all container freight that travels into Britain. Union workers recently rejected a 7% pay rise as it's below the rate of inflation. The port's head of corporate affairs, Paul Davies, says the strikes will hurt workers.
Unite, though, have declined. They refused to put the offer we've made to their members, their 1,900 members. They've had no say in this, and now they're having to go on strike. And that's going to cost each of them, the thick end of sort of 900, £900 each in lost wages.
Barristers are voting over a planned strike in a row with the government over jobs and pay. Members of the Criminal Bar Association in England and Wales have already staged brief walkouts. Now they've decided if they should take uninterrupted industrial action from the 5th of September. The ballot closes at midnight tonight, with the result expected tomorrow. Scotland's First Minister says a rise in the energy price cap must not go ahead as families across the country struggle to afford the rising cost of living. Nicola Sturgeon warns that many households face destitution and devastation if the expected rise goes ahead in October. She's due to hold a summit with energy bosses and is urging Westminster to work with the Scottish Government to find a solution. A voluntary scheme could help thousands of households with smart meters to save on their energy bills this winter. It's understood the National Grid electricity system operator wants to pay customers who ease the strain on power grids at peak times. It says turning off appliances in the evening could reduce the risk of blackouts and save people up to £6 per week. It's hoped that the scheme will be approved by the end of October. Outgoing Prime Minister Boris Johnson has reportedly approved a multi-billion-pound deal for a new nuclear power plant in Suffolk. Senior government sources say the decision to build the Sizewell C nuclear reactor happened several weeks ago. The project will be funded primarily through private investment, but the government is expected to buy a 20% stake in the plant. The daughter of a prominent Russian has been killed in a suspected car bomb attack outside of Moscow. Daria Dugina died last night after a suspected explosive device blew up the car she was driving in. Her father, Alexander Dugin, is known for supporting the invasion of Ukraine and is close to President Putin. Local media report that the pair had decided to switch cars at the last minute. Russia's foreign ministry is speculating that Ukraine may have been behind the attack, but it's denied any involvement. Heavyweight boxer Tyson Fury is calling on the government to tackle knife crime after he says his cousin died after being stabbed in the neck last night. Posting on social media, the world champion described UK knife crime as a pandemic and called for higher sentencing for those convicted of carrying a weapon. He also paid tribute to his cousin Rico Burton, wishing him a good place in heaven. The police watchdog is considering whether to investigate Scotland Yard after it emerged that officers came into contact with student nurse Sharon Davies after she was reported missing. The Met says they were called to an address in Croydon on July 6th due to concerns over a woman's welfare. However, she told them she didn't want their help and they left. The interaction occurred before Essex Police handed the missing person case over to the Met on July 23rd. Members of the Scottish Parliament are criticising the UK's new free trade deal with New Zealand, saying it will be damaging to Scottish farmers. The agreement will allow much higher quantities of produce to come into the UK without tariffs, including 12,000 tonnes of beef every year. But Scottish ministers warn domestic farmers will be at a disadvantage and they want greater safeguards, similar to the EU's restrictions. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Back now to Nana.
It's 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. You're watching GB News or listening live online or on radio. Now, for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. That's mine, it says, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. Joining me today is consultant editor at the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. Still to come, my special guest in Outside is former Olympic swimmer, gladiator and all-round champion, Sharon Davies. Now, during her career, Sharon broke a staggering 200 British records and claimed a silver medal in the 1980 Olympics, only being picked to the post by an East German athlete who admitted to doping. Now, Sharon is hitting the headlines over her controversial stance on transgender women in female sport, although I don't think she's controversial at all, and I think she makes perfect sense. We'll talk highs, lows, lessons learned, and what comes next on With the Outside. And in the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to scrap parliamentary recess? Now, Parliament is out for the summer, so for over a month, neither the House of Commons or the House of Lords have held any meetings to conduct business, despite the fact that we're in the grips of a cost of living crisis. But is it necessary to cease all parliamentary meetings for over a month so our politicians can have a summer holiday, especially considering the ever-growing crisis that we are all suffering from now? You can email me your thoughts, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at gbnews. So it is time for Outside, and I'm joined by former Olympic swimmer Sharon Davies. Now, Sharon was born in Plymouth, and she started swimming at the age of 6, having taken to the sport like a duck to water. Now, Sharon was already setting British national records at the age of 11, and by 13, she'd made it to the Montreal Olympics. She competed on the world stage for many years, accumulating an array of medals for Great Britain. Not only was she successful as an athlete, Sharon also pursued a career in modelling and presenting. The Olympian had a stint on the popular TV series Gladiators, where members of the public battled it out against on this wonderful athletic surf. Did you watch it? It was great. Athletic warriors in events that tested people's speed and strength. Most recently, Sharon hit the headlines after being highly critical of transgender women taking part in female sporting events, and she has received widespread criticism for her views. Let's speak to the lady herself, Sharon Davies. She joins me now. Oh, that's not her. We'll try and find Sharon. She's around. So we'll speak to Sharon Davies. Let's try again. Let's speak to the lady herself. Sharon Davies joins me now. There you go, Sharon. I knew it would work. Sharon,
hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I've literally just finished a month of doing the Commonwealth Games and the European Championships in Rome, so I've been home 24 hours. So, yes, I'm just kind of finished the washing, domestic bliss.
Yeah. Normal life returns. So how were they? How were the Games?
They were amazing. Birmingham did a fantastic job. England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, wonderful. Obviously, all the islands as well. Jersey, Guernsey, the Isle of Man. Just so many people to interview, coming at you thick and fast when it's all the home countries. And then the European Championships were in Rome. Sadly, we weren't in Munich with everybody else because the pool, would you believe, in Munich is obviously the pool from the 72 Olympic Games, but it only has 8 lanes. And nowadays we have to race in 10 lanes. So that's why we ended up in Rome. But, I'm not going to complain about being in Rome because it's pretty lovely.
Now, swimming is obviously a fabulous sport. I mean, I didn't think I could swim, but then I realised I could. My problem was that what I was doing, so I could do front crawl, but I literally would do 4 strokes and I was out of breath. And I realised that actually you don't hold your breath under the water. That's when you breathe out. And then suddenly I swam 25 lengths of a pool after I learnt that one simple thing. What about what you into?
I mean, that's the whole point. That's what they call trickle breathing. So it means that you're breathing out slowly through your nose when your face is in the water, and then when you turn to breathe, you take the air.
You see, I wish they'd told me that when I was younger. I'd have been really good. But you started swimming very young, and what got you into it?
I didn't really start swimming particularly young because obviously we try to get our kids swimming early as possible. We're an island, we're full of rivers and canals and quarries, and sadly we've had an increase in deaths because of the hot weather. So it's really important that youngsters can swim, and we're not meeting our 25-metre criteria in primary school. So less than 50% of children go off to senior school not being able to do their 25 metres. So I just learnt, like lots of other kids, I lived close to a swimming pool in Plymouth, which was where I was brought up. And what happened, I suppose, was that I gave up all the other things I was doing. So playing school sport or riding ponies or doing ballet, they all kind of fell by the wayside. And by the time I was about 8 or 9, I was in pretty decent sort of full training most days. And then junior international at 11. And as you mentioned, the Olympics at 13. And, that is 12 Olympic Games to go now.
You must be very passionate about it because when it comes to sport, you really have to put your mind into that thing and really love it. Did you feel that when you were younger, you gave up quite a lot to do it? And if so, what would be the one thing that you wish that you had done that you may have missed because of your training? Because I'm sure it was quite gruelling at times.
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually, because at the time, you honestly think you're missing out on everything because, everyone in school is just talking about yesterday's TV programmes, or the party that they were at, or the cinema that they went to. And of course, you can't do that when you're training 6 hours a day. Now, all these years later, I didn't miss anything, and it's trying to get it in perspective. That's the difficult thing when you're talking to young people, because obviously sometimes the little things seem so terribly important when you're a teenager. So it was always about looking at the bigger picture. I did a presentation one time and I talked about Misking, Starsky and Hutch, and how everybody was talking about it. And the next week, the company that I was working for sent me the box set of Starsky and Hutch, which was really nice. So I was able to catch up on it. But that's, how ridiculous is that now, at the time? But if you imagine just being in school and everybody talking about, last night's show and I couldn't join in. And that was really the biggest kind of sacrifice, but not really that important when it comes down to it.
Well, absolutely. It's really worth it, though, isn't it? Because later on, your physique is excellent, your form is excellent, and that's so important for life to keep yourself in good shape, because obviously you're really... It's
habit, I think, and I think that's what happens. I think what we have to understand with young people, and obviously less young people now do physical activity, and we have rising obesity rates, and, COVID certainly didn't help. It's about laying down those habits. So it's so important with young people that we lay down the right habits for them. And if they can have physical activity, and that means something that they enjoy doing, we don't have to force them to do things that they don't like doing, but being physically active and thinking outside of the box is something that we really must do with our school children. That's a primary school age, but it's senior school age as well. The drop off with young girls around 14, 15 is absolutely colossal. So if that means we need to run Zumba classes or do something different in school, then that's what we're going to have to do. Hair dryers in the changing rooms, these things matter to them. But if we can get them to have that physical activity habit, which then they can carry through life, that will save the National Health Service an awful lot of money in the long run.
It's true. I used to teach Zumba, actually. I was a Zumba teacher. I used to love it. It's great fun. It's such a good thing to do. Now, Sharon, if you were to look at your career, is there one moment that you would say was the best moment of your life and that really you felt that you'd arrived?
I think if you talk to any Olympian, it is your Olympic moment. I would trade all of my other moments for my Olympic medal. Having said that, I love the Commonwealth Games. I didn't have to compete against East Germans, which were always my nemesis because that was the period of history that I was racing. And so, no, my Olympic medal is the most important medal that I own. But I'm very proud of all the other things that I did, and I'm proud of the longevity of my career. And I'm so very privileged to still be able to be on the side of the pool. All these years later, I'm still putting a microphone in front of our great athletes. I got to speak to Ben Proud just a few days ago when he, won his fourth title in 12 months. He became long course champion, short course world champion, Commonwealth champion, and European champion, all within the space of 12 months. And I get to speak to him. It's just the best job.
Well, that's how I feel. I get to speak to Sharon Davies, somebody that I watched many, many years ago when I was younger, and I never thought I'd get to speak to. So it really is a pleasure to talk to you. Now, you talked about the East German side there because there was that doping. They beat you, but it was later found that they had been taking some sort of drugs or the doping. They failed the drug test. So how did you feel after that? You must have been, because you've mentioned it now, it must be something that sort of niggles you a little bit still.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. It was frustrating at the time. So it's not like we've now discovered, something that we didn't know. These athletes would turn up at major events. We'd never seen them before. They sounded very masculine. They had Adam's apples. They had very bad skin because they were given old-fashioned testosterone and Steranabol. And it was through no fault of their own. This was a state-run doping program that they had very little control over. So I had no qualms with the individuals, but I had a big qualm with the IOC, who did absolutely nothing about this for nearly 20 years. So, a couple of generations of young girls lost out on the medals that they should have had. And also a couple of generations of young girls in East Germany were given very, very nasty drugs, which had terrible side effects. And that's never really been properly acknowledged by the IOC or apologised for or put right. And, it was swimming, athletics and rowing were the three big sports that were affected. And so, for example, in my Olympics in Moscow, 1980, East Germany took first, second and third in pretty much every single event. I think it was bar two. And they won 90% of the women's medals and less than 5% of the men's. And that doesn't happen unless you're doing something illegal. And so it wasn't as if we didn't know a frustrating thing. And that's why the whole transgender situation with sport is not that I have any qualms with anyone. I'm very empathetic with anyone that's gender dysphoric. It must be absolutely horrendous. However, if you have male puberty advantage, that is not fair that you're able to compete against females. So, I'm just a big believer that sport should be fair, but we have to find better ways to be inclusive than to throw women's sport under the bus.
Because, obviously, we've had the golfing situation now, which I think was a golfer who's set to become the first transgender woman to win the coveted Ladies Professional Golf Association tour card after seeing off the competition. And I don't know what the advantage would be in golf, although there probably is, because you're bigger, you're stronger, you've gone through all of the different things that women haven't gone through. And I find it interesting that people say that your view is, you're criticised for your views. I think it's held by most women. I would say 90% of women. I mean, I haven't done a poll, but most women would say that. I don't understand. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you say, criticise. Yes, I mean, there are obviously trans activists out there that criticise, and they're very vocal and they're very loud, and they can be very, very abusive, and they do make it extremely difficult in all sorts of different walks of life. However, I don't think that's the general consensus. So not that Twitter is, the be all and end all, but I did a 24-hour poll on Twitter. 60,000 people responded, and 97% said that males should not be in female sport. So I think the general consensus is that males should not be in female sport. I think if you walk down the street and ask most people, that is the answer that you will get. However, we're living in a world where people are frightened to give their honest opinions. And I suppose I just felt, because of my history and because of the situation with East Germany, I could not stay stum and live with my own conscience. And so, I was in the lucky position where I've earned a very good living. I've got a lovely home. Yes, I knew it was going to impact on my living, but I felt that it was worth it for me to be able to say and do something to stop it before it became, a massive problem and a lot of people lost out. And it's not even like the East German situation in the fact that we can say they were breaking the rules, because if you're actually a transgender athlete and you're not breaking any rules, they will not be able to reallocate medals when everybody changes their mind, and those female athletes will have lost their chances forever. And that's just not fair. Sport should be fair. And there are ways we can find better solutions to be inclusive than just saying that half the world isn't entitled to fair sport.
So if you were to think of a solution, do you have anything in mind that you would think might solve this?
I think we have to stop messing about with, reducing testosterone for 1 year, for 3 years, to 5 nanomoles, to 10 nanomoles, because there's 15 peer-reviewed studies at the moment, and not a single one of those shows that you can, remove male puberty advantage. And we are made differently anyway. So even if you can reduce testosterone for a period of time and maybe remove half of that benefit, males are bigger and stronger. They have different lung capacity. They have different hip shape, which makes a very big difference in things like cycling. None of those things are ever going to be removed by reducing testosterone. So when people spend millions and millions of pounds trying to stop people from taking drugs in sport and cheating, I don't understand how women are supposed to just accept anywhere between 10 and 30% disadvantage when they start the race, because that's just madness.
You know that, I know that, surely everyone knows that. Sharon Davies, thank you so much for talking to me. It's such a pleasure. That is Sharon Davies. She's a former Olympic swimmer. Well, coming up, it is the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is it time to scrap parliamentary recess? Is it necessary to cease all parliamentary meetings for over a month so our politicians can have a summer holiday? That's on the way, but first let's get an update with the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many with some clear spells, but outbreaks of drizzle will continue in Wales and southwest England. Let's take a look. Patchy rain and drizzle will spread further inland across the southwest this evening, with mist around the coast of Devon and Cornwall. It will be a warm and humid evening. Southeast England will stay dry with some clear spells. A warm evening here as humidity rises throughout the night. Thick cloud will linger across Wales with some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle at times. There could be some mist and fog around parts of the south coast. A mostly dry end to the day in the Midlands, although there could be a few spots of light rain around Birmingham as the cloud thickens. After a dry and sunny day across much of northern England, it will be a fine evening with plenty of clear spells. Feeling fresh under the clear skies, but turning more humid later on. Showers in Scotland will gradually ease away this evening, leaving most places dry and clear. Turning chilly after dark as temperatures quickly fall away, there could be 1 or 2 showers to end the day in Northern Ireland, but most places will stay dry. It will be a fairly cloudy evening. A southerly breeze will give a fairly warm and humid night across the south. Further north, it will be fresher, but heavy rain will arrive into Northern Ireland in the early hours. And that's how the weather's shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farrow.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon. Welcome on board if you've just joined me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. So we've got so much to discuss because, of course, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. And lots of you have been getting in touch with loads of things, so keep those comments and thoughts coming. I know we've got a poll at the moment asking about whether you feel strikes are self-imposed lockdowns. Keep your views coming on that. But, of course, it's the time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is it time to scrap parliamentary recess? Now, Parliament is out for the summer, so for over a month, neither the House of Commons or the House of Lords have held any meetings or whatsoever. There's no real business happening at the Houses of Parliament. And current Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, well, he has been spotted. He vanished for a while, but there he is. If you're watching on TV, you can see him. If you're on radio, check us out online or follow us on YouTube. You can see the pictures. He looks sort of a bit like a hobo, doesn't he, really? But anyway, he's our current Prime Minister at the moment, and it's his second holiday this month. He's enjoying lavish meals in Greece whilst extreme weather and the cost of living crisis goes on and continues to damage the UK. But is it necessary to seize all parliamentary meetings for over a month so our politicians can have a holiday, especially considering the ever-growing crisis? So for this debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to scrap parliamentary recess? I'm joined now by political editor for the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, welcome on board. Good to see you, Nigel. Right, recess, what do you think? Do you think it's an outdated method of taking time off for our parliamentarians?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's only there historically because they wanted to get away for the grouse shooting season.
Right.
So if Parliament was sitting at the moment, as Labour wants it to, MPs could tomorrow pass legislation which would freeze energy prices and could do that then in advance of the announcement on Friday when we'll know the October energy cap. Now, they can't do any of those things because they're all away. And it seems to me there's no reason nowadays why Parliament can't do the same kind of time schedule as businesses do. That it's easy that a pairing system means MPs could get away on holiday because they have their votes cancelled out. We'd only need short breaks for things like prorogation before a state opening and also for party conferences. But a party conference could be held over a weekend or a bank holiday weekend if they needed 3 days without disrupting Parliament.
Voting for your own prison sentence. You're not going to vote yourself a lot of time in jail, are you? So they're the ones that would have to vote it, isn't it? So I can't see the system changing anytime soon. Do you think that we should demand that they come back and actually do some work and change the system? And if so, how would we get them to do that?
Well, you're absolutely right, Nana. It's going to be down to the MPs themselves to actually change it. But the whole thing is that there are very good reasons for making, for instance, Parliament more family friendly rather than doing ridiculous hours. That would help, for instance, women who are usually the main carer for children. More women become MPs. So at the moment we've got a third of MPs are women. It should be 50%. So that would help. I'm not sure how many MPs would be totally against this kind of system. That the hours there are ridiculous. There are the occasional all-night sessions. They're voting at 10 o'clock at night. If you were able to extend the parliamentary time that they're actually there, you could reduce the hours when they have to be voting, and I'm sure the number of MPs would actually favour that. The only question really is to let them have a 4-day week, so Parliament would begin on a Tuesday, so they can get back from their constituencies in time to be there.
And very briefly, Nigel, because we're running out of time, you've got about 30 seconds. What do you make of Boris going on holiday? Is that fair enough?
Yeah, I think it probably is. I'm not sure.
Even though we're in a cost of living crisis.
Well, he shouldn't be taking 2 holidays, and I think that there should be a recall of Parliament, and Boris Johnson should be back for it.
All right, well, Nigel, thank you very much for talking to me. That's Nigel Nelson. He's the political editor for the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People. Also joining me is Conservative councillor Claire Pearsall. Claire, thank you so much for joining me. Is it fair, do you think, for parliamentary activity to literally cease, for them to go on holiday for 4 weeks, seeing as this was based on an outdated concept?
Well, see, now this is where I disagree, because it's not as if they have disappeared off on holiday for 4 weeks. The majority of MPs, the ones that I speak to, use this time to meet with their constituents, to meet with businesses, to attend events, and just get out there in the street and actually speak to people. Just because they're not physically sitting in Parliament doesn't mean that they're not doing any work. In fact, people still have problems coming through, whether it be cost of living, or whether it be something to do with the local council or their benefits or whatever it might be. The MPs are there to serve them, and that's what they generally do. They go and have surgeries, they meet people, so they are still dealing with work. And I like to look at it in the same way that we would never assume that teachers have, an entire 6 weeks worth of holiday, because we know that they don't. The majority of them work all the way through. So I think it's a little unfair to say that everything's ground to a halt and nothing is taking place. Just because they're physically not sitting in the green benches in the chamber of the House of Commons doesn't mean they're not working, and doesn't mean that they're not contactable.
But they're working for their constituents. But for the macro vision of this, which are law changes, things that are going with the cost of living that are affecting the country as a whole, they're not about to make those decisions. And when we're in the grips of this, do you think it's still reasonable that they should be continuing with this particular holiday? I mean, there's a massive cost of living crisis. There are decisions to be made. People are looking at their energy bills, and the energy price cap is coming. We don't even know who to turn to.
And I don't disagree with that. When there is something serious, then Parliament needs to be recalled. Now, I take slight objection to Nigel suggesting that they could come back on a Monday and have a bill put through that would solve the cost of living crisis, because it doesn't work like that. But Parliament can be recalled at any time. The government has that in their armour and they can use it. So should there be a decision that needs to be taken, then they absolutely should be recalled, and they should be there and they should discuss it. But I'm not sure that just putting them in Parliament, what is it you expect them to actually do? Because it is the ministers and the Prime Minister in particular of these departments are the ones who can sign off the decisions. All of the backbenchers and junior ministers and things like that don't necessarily have much of a say in it. So to bring everybody back and sit there, I don't see what the purpose is. But ministers, and especially the Prime Minister, should definitely be taking this more seriously than they are.
But this whole, but the actual concept of having a whole month off, does that not seem a bit out? I mean, the reason why it was done was because of some grouse season, right? So that doesn't exist anymore. So surely they should get back to work, restructure their hours, as Nigel suggested, and work like the rest of us when we're working, because we can't all suddenly stop, and they are running a country.
Well, that's right. But it does also depend on what business it is you have going through. There is no point in having 650 MPs sitting there if the government is not putting any business for them to decide upon. If they're just sitting in their offices dealing with constituents down the phone, when realistically they could be in their constituencies doing that face-to-face, they could be looking at the local businesses and talking to street traders, just many of the things that they do, then I'm not sure of the benefit. Some restructure, especially to do with working hours, is definitely needed. It is ridiculous that they're sitting until 10, 11 o'clock at night, when if you did remove some of the holiday, then you could change those hours and encourage more people coming into Parliament, and that would be for the better.
Well, Claire, thank you so much for your thoughts. That's Claire Pearsall. Lovely to talk to you. Let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. Barry says Britain's in a major energy crisis because no one is in Westminster sorting it out. Sophia says the Prime Minister deserves a holiday too. Politicians have worked hard during the pandemic. They need to have an outlet to recharge. But 4 weeks, really? Maureen says it should work like other organisations, not like school holidays. Well, it is literally like school. If you've ever been to the Houses of Parliament, the way they behave, it's like children. Like school holidays where everyone is off at the same time. Elliot says politicians who go on holiday already make enough mistakes. The last thing we need is MPs to make even more due to exhaustion and burnout. Well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GBNews on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we'll continue with our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is it time to scrap parliamentary recess? You will hear the thoughts of my panel, consultant editor at the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. It's 5:33. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. Dock workers at one of Britain's busiest ports have gone on strike for 8 days. Nearly 2,000 union members at Felixstowe in Suffolk are striking for the first time in nearly 30 years. They recently rejected a 7% pay rise as it's below the rate of inflation. Barristers are voting over a planned strike in a row with the government over jobs and pay. Members of the Criminal Bar Association in England and Wales are deciding whether to take uninterrupted industrial action, starting on the 5th of September. The ballot closes at midnight tonight, with the result expected tomorrow. The voluntary scheme could help thousands of households with smart meters to save on their energy bills this winter. It's understood that the National Grid electricity system operator plans to pay customers for easing the strain on power grids at peak times. It says turning off appliances in the evening could reduce the risk of blackouts and save people up to £6 per week. Members of the Scottish Parliament are criticising the UK's new free trade deal with New Zealand, saying it will be damaging to Scottish farmers. The agreement will allow much higher quantities of produce to come into the UK without tariffs, including 12,000 tonnes of beef each year. But Scottish ministers warn that domestic farmers will be at a disadvantage. They want greater safeguards similar to the EU's restrictions. And heavyweight boxer Tyson Fury is calling on the government to tackle knife crime after he says his cousin died after being stabbed in the neck last night. Posting on social media, the world champion described UK knife crime as a pandemic and called for higher sentencing for those convicted of carrying a weapon. He also paid tribute to his cousin Rico Burton, wishing him a good place in heaven. On TV, online and on DAB Plus Radio, this is GB News. Back to Nana in just a moment.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon, this is GB News. Welcome on board. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel. Now, it is time for our Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is it time to scrap parliamentary recess? Now, for over a month, neither the House of Commons or the House of Lords have held any meetings to conduct business whatsoever. But is it really necessary to cease all parliamentary meetings so our politicians can have a summer holiday? Do they actually all need to go off together like this, especially now when we've got an ever-growing crisis with the cost of living? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to scrap parliamentary recess? Well, let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by consultant editor at the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. Andrew, your thoughts? You were at the hustings, at the debates, weren't you?
Up in Lee in Yorkshire. Look, normally I would say let them be on recess, because frankly, when Parliament's sitting, these MPs, most of the legislation they bring in is flawed and useless and has to be undone. So let's have less government, frankly. But because of this cost of living crisis, I think it turns out it's a terrible optic that they're away. And it's not just the 4 weeks now. And that when the party conferences are held, that's another 3 weeks their old Parliament is away. Why do we need to shut Parliament down so the Liberal Democrats can have their party conference, the Labour Party can, and the Tories can? As Nigel Nelson said, they could get that all done in a weekend. And even if they don't, why should Parliament stop because of party political business?
They're just having a jolly, aren't they?
I mean, it's mind you, party conferences, let me tell you, they're not very jolly. If you do 3 weeks of them, very bad for the liver as well. But I think it is a bad optic at the moment. As for the Prime Minister, well, what can he do? He's leading a zombie government. They chopped him off at the knees, the Tory party. He can't do anything because he can't mandate the next Prime Minister. It's up to Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak. So why can't he have a holiday? He looks exhausted.
Well, do you know what? The photograph in your fabulous newspaper with his impish, he looks like it looks like the weight of the world's been lifted off his shoulders. There's a great article. Apparently, they pulled over for some traditional spinach and cheese pies and some lamb chops. The Greeks don't half know how to barbecue lamb. They really are. I read here, though, that it's more than just a month. And this is from the government website. The House of Commons, Thursday the 21st of July until Monday the 5th of September. That's one hell of a holiday.
And then they'll come back for a week and then they'll go off again for the party conferences. 3 weeks.
I'm made up for Boris Johnson. I really am. I think that he's been treated terribly. And those MPs who were forced, because the question was all about his probity, all of those MPs who were forced to attack him because the question's about integrity, they will soon regret that decision. Because in 2 years' time, and don't forget it's mid-term, obviously the Tories are going to be down in the polls. Of course they are. But you try and find someone almost with a talismanic approach to life as that fella, Boris Johnson. They ain't going to get anyone.
Well, I'm inclined to agree with you that he deserved a holiday. I mean, the nonsense that he had to put up with, I thought it was just ridiculous. And as you say, it is a zombie government and he couldn't do anything.
There's nothing he can do anyway.
Wanted to get rid of him. They weren't even going to allow him to wait until the whole debates thing was finished. They wanted to get rid of him before that. So I'm with him for him to go off.
The Prime Minister's work incredibly hard. I mean, there's no rest, and people who work for them work incredibly hard. The phone never stops ringing, and you see how much they all age, whether it's Theresa May, Tony Blair,
Well, his hair's gone thinner, hasn't it?
and Boris Johnson. It just ages them because they get so little sleep. And they're woken up in the middle of the night with calls from around the world, and he's had a pandemic to deal with, cost of living crisis, and, of course, Ukraine. I mean, he's had a really bad
That's
watch.
only in 2 years.
Exactly.
Just over 2 years. I think he deserves a holiday. But as for the others, I mean, who's been spotted? I mean, we've got Keir Starmer on holiday in Mallorca, Deem Zahawi. I just think that the fact that they're all going at the same time, and the reason why this was done was because of some outdated concept that doesn't exist anymore. It is time now for this to change. And as I said, though, it's unlikely that they're going to vote for a change that would ruin their wonderful summer holiday.
But what would the alternative be, though? Just people to book holidays like all three of us?
Yeah, absolutely.
So he'll say, right, I want the middle of August off or something like that.
No, that's what we'll do.
Most MPs have a pair on the Labour and the Tory side, so you don't have to be present for the vote. Or you could do, when I was growing up, my dad worked for British Leyland, the factory closed for 2 weeks in the summer.
That's right.
Everybody went on holiday at the same time. Why don't they just do that? 2 weeks rather than 6 weeks in recess.
I'm still opposed to them all going at once. I just don't see the point. I think perhaps you could have 2 weeks at some point and 2 weeks at some point, and they've got an option to take one of them or something like that. But I'm more inclined to just allow them to take holidays like everybody else.
You know, Andrew's point about a summer fortnight closure, and that was because all of the supplying parts, for example, your dad worked at Longbridge, building Austin Rovers, so that everybody in the supply chain could also take those 2 weeks off. It's amazing. It's big in Birmingham, big in Coventry. The factory fortnight, I think they call it, where loads of businesses close down because they're all interlinked.
Yeah, you'd go on holiday to Butlins and you see half of British Leyland in the same holiday camp.
That's correct.
But I don't agree. I certainly don't agree with them doing this. I don't really understand why we haven't taken them to task on this and actually got them to come back.
It is the perception is not good. It does not look good for Parliament.
6 weeks is a long time.
Because they're paid, something like 84 grand.
Yeah.
And then obviously they get the extra living allowance, which I think is about almost 2 grand a month.
I mean, they will be working in their constituencies, but this is the biggest crisis any of us can remember. And it needs solutions in Parliament.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I don't know whether they're prepared to change anything. But, of course, the show is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome a great British voice, your opportunity to tell us what you think about the topics that we're discussing. Where should we go?
Ooh.
Do you fancy Kidderminster?
Kiddie.
Yeah, let's go to Kidderminster. Let's have a chat to our GB voice, John Reid. John, hello.
Hello, Nana.
Hello. John, what do you think about this? They're all on holiday. It's over 4 weeks now. Whilst they do deserve one, what do you feel about the fact they could all take them together like this, at a time like this?
I feel it's absolutely ridiculous, Nana. They should keep the Parliament running for as many weeks of the year as they can. This, although, is a government, and I think quite often we get this, that doesn't care, couldn't care less what happens, could they? I noticed that Boris, it's reported today, has found time to allow the go-ahead on the Sizewell C nuclear reactor. So it's not true to say he's not doing anything at all, but he hasn't done a fat lot, has he? He's had his passes and so on. And do they care? That's what it comes down to. Do they care about anything? Do they care about the number of illegal we've got?
Oh, well,
do they care about the...
Oh, we've lost John. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much. That's John Reid, our great British voices there in Kidderminster. And he ended with, do they care, which is a good question. Do they? Who knows? We'll keep your thoughts coming as ever. Now, today, I've been asking you, is it time to scrap parliamentary recess? Let's see what you've been saying. Sharon says, whilst the adults are on holiday, why not have young students in Parliament so they can have a go at debating the issues? They will add a fresh perspective on things which is much needed in the current climate. Do you know, I think they might actually do a better job. I think Sharon's got a point.
A load of students changing legislation whilst Boris Johnson's on holiday.
Yeah, what a good idea.
That's a great idea, Sharon. I mean, it is sort of like they're at school, aren't they? Eyes to the left, eyes to the right, hey, order, order. I mean, it's such old English language, it's nonsense. Right, let's see what James says. James says everyone's entitled to a holiday, but the country shouldn't come to a standstill because of recess, which it has. Running the country is a 24/7 job. They don't need to all be off at the same time. No businesses allow all their employees to take a holiday at the same time. Although, was it Twitter or one of the businesses, one of those online businesses that allowed everyone to have a break to recharge? Maybe that was during the pandemic. Let's see what Dave says. MPs use summer recess to catch up with work in their constituencies. They need this time. Well, what about us, though? What about the cost of living? Paul says no one is saying MPs can't go on holiday, but the summer recess is from the 21st of July to the 5th of September. Doesn't that seem a little long without Parliament? I agree. It does. It's too long. Jerry says, personally, I hope Boris Johnson is having a fantastic holiday. He really deserves it. And I think that sentiment is echoed by everyone on the panel here. Natasha says, whether politicians are in Parliament or not, or on holiday, they can't sort anything out. Is there really a difference? On that bombshell, which is a very good point, Natasha, we'll move on because it is time for a little of our supplement Sunday. And we've got a couple of stories that caught our eye. That's on the way. But this is one that caught my eye because I love these ones where governments are dragging their feet responding to climate change. Many are concerned and they're looking for actions that individuals can take, like becoming a vegan. The vegans are back. But a growing body of research suggests that vegan food and products take, on average, more energy to manufacture. Whilst great for animals, they could be harmful to the environment. So, is veganism becoming counterproductive to the environmental movement? I'll start with Danny, because he looks like a vegan. Not.
Oh, a growing body. I thought you were going to use that as a segue. I don't want to become a vegan, no. I'm a carnivore. I enjoy eating dead animals. I think that's fairly normal. You know, go back millions of years, hunter-gatherers and all of that. So, no, I'm not really that bothered about the environmental impact that a tiny little group of people make to the planet. So I'm going to stick with dead animals.
Me too. A nut roast versus roast dinner. There's no competition, is there? Christmas lunch, imagine?
Can you imagine that? Oh,
no. And we know that cows input a lot of...
That's right.
But what are you suggesting? Kill all the cows? To save the environment?
Well, I don't even think it's...
Put farmers out of business.
Well, that's exactly what happened, actually, in one place where they tried to say that people shouldn't eat meat.
Yeah.
And then the farming community came up and said, hang on a minute, you're destroying our agriculture.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that the vegan argument to help the planet or to save us on the planet actually holds any water, because a lot of the things that you do... So they say, oh, well, soya is used to feed the animals, and so, it doesn't... that's the problem. So if we got rid of the animals, we won't be using the soy. But if we all got rid of the animals and then we had soy, we'd have to use so much land to produce even more soy because there's more people than animals. None of it adds up.
The animals have been around a lot longer than us.
There is one animal you can eat alive. That is... Whether it's an animal or not, I don't know. But what do you call them things that you've got to crack open the shell and then you
Oysters.
Oysters. That's it. They're alive.
Yeah, but they're horrible.
Oh, God.
They are truly horrible.
Yeah, you don't chew them. What's the point?
No.
Not chewing
They're
it.
supposed to be an aphrodisiac. That's the point.
Oh, really?
Ooh.
I think
there's half a dozen
Did
chilling
you not
in the
know
fridge
that?
for you, young lady.
Right, now it's time for Supplement Sunday. This is the part of the show where my panel, look at some of the other stories making the papers today. If you just joining me, it's consultant editor at the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly.
Yep.
Every now and again I do that. Just to show him. Right, let's start with... Who should we start with? Mine's a fun one, so I'm going to start with...
Mine's not fun.
Danny.
Should we get this one out of the way? This is just, honestly, it makes me want to smack my head against a brick wall. Grooming scandal town Rotherham to become the UK's first ever children's capital of culture. I mean, how blind are they to public opinion? Report estimated that 1,400 children were sexually abused between 1997 and 2013. The government has now revealed, though, it's reviewing the decision to award Rotherham £1.8 million in taxpayer cash to fund the year-long initiative in 2025.
Who
Don't
came
forget
up with this balmy idea, Danny? It's just ridiculous, isn't it?
It's the first ever children. It's awful. It's naive. It's blind. It's great. It's insulting.
It is. And that council, Rotherham, let down those children.
Yeah.
So did the police.
Yeah, that's right. Because they were worried about being called racist.
Exactly. How appalling.
I know.
How tin-eared is that?
Why would they do that? I don't understand why they would think that is even a good idea.
It'll have to be overturned.
Well, one would hope so.
Yeah.
Britain's most notorious child sex scandals took place in that town.
I don't know what the world is coming to, and that would be a very bad idea. I mean, it's a ridiculous
jaw-dropping,
idea.
actually.
It is
jaw-dropping.
Right,
So blind, aren't they?
Yeah,
Andrew, what have you got? What have you got?
Well, this is the Labour Party's opened up an 8-point lead over the Tories, according to this new poll with Opinion. It's the biggest lead they've had with this polling company for years and years. It follows a poll in the Times on Friday, giving Labour a 13-point lead. I would just say this. Back in 2012, the Labour Party had a 15-point lead over David Cameron's Conservative government, and 3 years later, the Conservatives won the general election. This is what happens mid-term. Difference between now and then, though, of course, we've got a huge cost-of-living crisis, and the Tories have just defenestrated their most popular leader they've had since Margaret Thatcher.
I can't believe they did that. That was the most stupid thing. I don't know what they were thinking. Oh, let's get rid of the most charismatic leader that we've ever had, who managed to get an 80-seat majority, pretty much unheard of, just because he may or may not have had a party, and they made some silly rules up where you'll become criminalised because you have a party.
Yeah. Well, he's
couldn't make it up.
He was the most successful lead since Thatcher in 1987. So that's where the polls are, and I suspect they'll get worse before they get better.
And also, who really takes too much belief in those polls? Because a lot of them are totally out of order and totally wrong.
Of course they are. Yeah, they're totally wrong. Yeah, and it's midterms. What happens?
Midterm. That's what happened midterm. Right, well, let's take a look at mine, because, OK, so have a think about the most dangerous city that you would think in Europe.
I'm going to go with Bradford.
No, don't ruin it.
Oh, sorry.
If you were to think about it without...
I'd say London. All the stabbings and fatal... there have been about 6 fatal stabbings in London in the last 2 weeks, and we've heard nothing from the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, who is the Police and Crime Commissioner. Oh, does he blame the weather? Everybody's fault but his.
He blames the weather. Well, listen, across Europe, it turns out that, as you've ruined my punchline, Bradford topped the list of the most dangerous city in Europe. Yes, the West Yorkshire city ranked #1 in the most crime-ridden city in Europe, and it was closely followed by Birmingham. Coventry. And then second, and then Birmingham in 5th.
Gosh.
Birmingham. Is it really that dangerous, Birmingham?
Well, Coventry, I'm very sorry to say, but Coventry is a bit of a dump, and it has changed unrecognisably.
But in Europe, this is the thing, in Europe...
it's a violent place. It's a violent place, without a doubt. This is per capita, per 100,000 people. It's a violent place. I wouldn't want to walk around Coventry city centre at 1 a.m. No chance. It's become a dumping ground as well. Whether there's a connection, I don't know. It's become a dumping ground for the asylum seekers and the illegal immigrants.
Do you think?
No, I know. All the hotels in the city centre have been taken over. Well, you can't book a room in Coventry. Well, you probably can. But the point I'm making, generally speaking, it's unrecognisable to when I first moved there 25 years ago.
That's sad.
Well, on that list, though, I think Odessa in Ukraine came 22nd. So where there's an actual war zone...
Yeah, but I think that might be more dangerous.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
You can't conflate the two.
No, but on that list, the list, so where they are conflating them, on that list it came 22nd.
And I thought Moscow might have been quite high up the list.
Yeah. I would have thought London would have been #1, though.
Yeah.
Well, but that's it. Isn't that incredible? My goodness. Well, listen, we've been talking about a load of stuff today, and one of those things on today's show, we've been asking whether you think we're heading towards a strike-imposed lockdown. Well, according to our Twitter poll, it hasn't changed much, but 39% of you say yes, and 61% of you say no. So what is your final thoughts on that, then? What do you think, Danny? Are we heading towards a strike-imposed lockdown? Do you think it's something that we...
No, because I don't think it affects as many people as Mick Lynch and his cronies want to think that it affects. I really do.
But it's expanding, lots of different...
It is expanding, but you can work from home. There's lots of alternatives now to getting on the bus and going into the office. COVID's taught us that.
Yeah, I'm very depressed that the dock workers are going on strike, because there's already problems with the supply chain, food, because of the problems in Ukraine, and that's going to just make it worse.
Oh, well, I don't know. But anyway, listen, it's fun. This is GB News. We're live. I've got to say thank you to you for taking part, and a big thank you to my panel, consultant editor at the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and also broadcaster Danny Kelly for joining me today. It's a pleasure as ever. Thank you again for your company. I look forward to seeing you on Friday when I'm back at 4. There's still loads of stuff here on GB News. Do not go anywhere. Coming up after the break, it's the political correction. And later this evening, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. They'll be discussing why the army is putting a halt on hiring white men in the name of diversity. I'll leave you with the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many with some clear spells, but outbreaks of drizzle will continue in Wales and southwest England. Let's take a look. Patchy rain and drizzle will spread further inland across the southwest this evening, with mist around the coast of Devon and Cornwall. It will be a warm and humid evening. Southeast England will stay dry with some clear spells. A warm evening here as humidity rises throughout the night. Thick cloud will linger across Wales with some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle at times. There could be some mist and fog around parts of the south coast. A mostly dry end to the day in the Midlands, although there could be a few spots of light rain around Birmingham as the cloud thickens. After a dry and sunny day across much of northern England, it will be a fine evening with plenty of clear spells. Feeling fresh under the clear skies, but turning more humid later on. Showers in Scotland will gradually ease away this evening, leaving most